I remember the first time somebody called me a disciple of Jesus. Yeah, disciple. Had a nice ring to it. It felt strong. You realized you were a part of something much bigger than yourself. Sometimes it was really, really tough. See, I can't begin to describe just how disorienting things were back then. I mean, one minute Jesus is telling you about the gift of life, and the next minute it seems like he's just going to let us drown in the middle of the sea. Spoiler alert, we didn't drown. It sure seemed like we were going to. Looking back on it, I realized that Jesus didn't waste a moment. I mean, he was always showing us that he was who he said he was. Which, I know, begs the question, how could we doubt him? Yeah, I tend to be the one that gets asked that more than anybody because for some reason, doubter has been connected with my name. For the record, I wasn't the only one who doubted. It's just, I wasn't there the day that Jesus appeared to everyone else. I was gone. And so I didn't, look, the finality of death, it has a choking grip on all of us. And on that day that Jesus was crucified, when death swallowed him up, and then there was the day that they showed me his hands and the scars. And he said, Thomas, you believe because you see. But there's going to be people who believe and don't see. And that night changed everything. I mean, I was still a disciple, but now I was an apostle. Sent to share the good news, to tell a story. You know, there's another word. Started with a few of us, began to spread. I think it's the best word of all. It says everything that needs to be said because we realized it wasn't about how well we believed. It was about who we believed in. Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Yeah, from that moment on, we were called believers.
All right. What's up, everybody? My name is Gilly. I am the youth pastor here, and occasionally I fill in when Greg needs some expert opinions. So I am here. So believers, what does believers mean to you? Well, Webster's dictionary would define believers as a person who believes that a specified thing is effective, proper, or desirable. I see believers all over the place. I mean, there's some people that believe that aliens are real. There's some people that believe Sasquatch is real. If you've seen Harry and the Hendersons, it looks like tons of fun. I would love to be part of that. And there's even some people that believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers is the best football team in the world. They would be wrong. The sheer faith that it takes to believe that is mind-boggling.
You serious?
Go Cowboys. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But if we have doubts, does that mean that we believe any less? Doubts and questions are part of human nature. My hope for you today that in this message that I give you about this guy named Thomas, that you will be able to put aside some of the worries and doubts that you may have about your own faith. I remember Greg asked me to start this series about disciples that maybe have not been talked about as much as the other ones got. So you're going to go through a whole series of these other disciples. And I remember him rambling off some of the names, and then I heard Thomas. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do Thomas. That sounds easy. How hard can it be? And I quickly found out after doing some research that he's probably the least mentioned one in the entire Bible. And I quickly found out why Greg had such a look of disbelief on his face. There's not a lot written about Thomas. My research quickly found out there's a lot of hearsay. There's a lot of, some people say he did this, some people say he did that. But a lot of the scholars, some scholars believe and some scholars don't. And it was at this time I was thinking, what am I going to be doing with this information? I was starting to panic. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not a Bible theologian. I'm not Pastor Greg. I'm not Dr. Roy. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I started to panic, and then it hit me. At that moment, an overwhelming sensation came over me. I knew why God chose me to pick Thomas. I struggle with doubt. I doubt my abilities. I question my failures. I even doubt my success. Was it good enough? Did I do that event good enough? Did I give it my all? What can I have done better? Sometimes I even find myself questioning and doubting God. As many people know, I've been a single dad for many, many, many years. And I began to question and doubt whether God was ever going to send me my person. And it finally got to the point where I had a big conversation with God. And I was like, fine, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. I'll work with kids for the rest of my life, even if it means that I'll be single forever, but I'm going to cry and whine about it the entire time. And around that time, I sent a message to somebody on a Facebook dating app. And actually, a year ago today, I have been Facebook friends with my lovely wife, Brittany. I sent her a message, and when we started talking, I quickly found out that she was everything that I had asked for. Pastor Greg told me to write a list of all the qualities that I wanted in a woman. And some people would say I'm picky. I would say they didn't have a pinkish hue. What I liked, I wrote down all these things, and quickly I found out from Brittany that she had all of these things. You can ask her after this message. I told her that she was the one before we even met, and she was like, whoa, you need to slow down a little bit there. And she may have had her doubts, but I didn't have mine. So I started to read about Thomas. And so I figured with you guys, let's start a little bit. Who was Apostle Thomas? Chances are you guys know Thomas for doubting Thomas. The Gospels don't tell us a lot about him, but he's identified in John's Gospel about needing to touch Jesus' wounds to see it, to believe it. You know, there's a good chance that Thomas was a twin. John calls Thomas Didymus, which means twin. And Thomas also means twin in Arabic. Although all the Gospels mention Thomas, it's only the Gospel of John that records any of Thomas's words. It kind of makes you wonder why they didn't want to keep him in the Bible that much. But from what I've read, tradition tells us that Thomas was a missionary who might have ended up in India. But it's hard to say with any certainty how far east he traveled. But it seems that he made it his life's mission to spread the gospel as much as he could. Despite the very few references of Thomas in the New Testament, there are some things that we can learn from him. So I got 5 lessons that I figured I would share with you today that maybe you could take home with you. The first one is that Jesus cares about our sincere questions. It was oftentimes that Jesus spoke to his disciples and other people, and it seemed very vague. It wasn't until much later that we'd be able to understand what he was trying to tell us. But it doesn't mean that Jesus didn't care about our questions. It says at one point, "Let your hearts not be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. And you know the way where I'm going." I imagine at that point, the apostles are sitting around listening to Jesus and thinking, what did he just say? I have questions. And it's Thomas, my man Thomas, who pipes up and says, Lord, we don't know where you're going, so how can we know the way? Now, it's obvious that Thomas is missing the greater point of this conversation. And I imagine Jesus not getting frustrated with Thomas's question, but I imagine Jesus rather smiling at Thomas's question. And then Jesus says one of the most profound things in the gospel and basically gives it out in layman's terms. I am the truth, the way, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I mean, that's deep. The lesson here is that we shouldn't be ashamed of our questions. Asking for clarification can lead to new insights, breakthroughs, and thoughts. Thomas's skepticism wasn't him trying to be annoying, but rather his doubt represents a genuine, truth-loving quest to understand and know Jesus better. The second thing that I got from this is that community matters a lot. When Jesus appears to the disciples the first time, Thomas is absent, and when the others tell him, he doesn't believe them. I kind of picture Thomas's face when the others go to tell him, something like this. And think about Thomas. This guy walked with the other disciples, with the Lord, and yet his doubt rendered him unable to believe their testimony. His doubt disabled his ability to believe in the same way that our doubts, when allowed, will allow us not to believe anymore. We must be careful not to doubt, but to believe. You see, unbelief is so powerful that it can stop God's work in your life. I'm going to say that again. Unbelief is so powerful that it can stop God's work in your life. It's so powerful that it can keep God at a distance. It's so powerful that it can keep you stuck where you are. Something that I firmly believe helps kill doubt is community. Whether it's in a gym, in a team sport, in an office building, and even this very own place, church. I firmly believe that for the most part, where you find that you fit in the most, we're better together. You see, it isn't Jesus' intention that we follow him in isolation. Rather, it's incredibly important for us to stay connected as community, staying connected to him, and regularly gather as Christians. This connection allows us to stay encouraged by each other's stories and shared experiences, and also allows us to uplift others when they're down. I don't know if there's any barbecue guys around here, but it's summer. I love a good barbecue. Get a burger and brats on there, some steak. Well, the thing I noticed about barbecue, you got all those charcoal briquettes right there. What happens is you get them all together, you cook them up, you get them going, the fire goes good, you can have a nice summer meal. But if you take one of those briquettes out, it quickly cools off and it is ineffective. You see, our faith is kind of like those briquettes. When we are together, we're on fire for Jesus and we're making an impact. But when we start to wander and we get away, we have a tendency to cool off and be less effective for Jesus. So in this moment, we see the need for community and connection. The third thing that I got for you guys today is faith is crucial as Christians. So after the fellas come running to tell Thomas what they saw, you know what he says? I'll tell you what he says. He says, unless I see in his hands the mark of the nails, and I place my fingers into the mark of the nails, and place my hand into his side, I will never believe. I will never believe. With those famous words, Thomas earned a nickname that would follow him throughout history, Doubting Thomas. For Thomas, and for many of us, seeing is believing. But when Thomas told the other disciples that he needed proof to believe that Jesus had risen, he was speaking honestly. Sincere faith doesn't prohibit sincere investigation. 8 days after Jesus' resurrection, the disciples met again together. This time, Thomas was there. It says, though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. Jesus knew exactly what Thomas needed to believe. He provided the evidence, and Jesus lovingly met Thomas at the exact point where he needed and guided him back to his faith. It's also important to recognize Jesus' gentleness that he expresses here. I love how Jesus didn't chastise Thomas or mock him for his lack of faith, but rather he addressed it in a way that allowed him to believe. In an instant, Thomas goes from not believing that Jesus had risen to recognizing that he is the Son of God. We can be honest with God about our doubts and our questions. He understands the struggles that we have, and he's quite capable of strengthening our faith when given the opportunity. And just like Thomas, we will be able to confess, "My Lord and my God," with all confidence of who Jesus is and the position that he holds. The fourth thing that I got that I wanted to share with you guys today is humans are emotionally complex. You know, it's easy to think that bravery is either a trait we have or we don't have. But the truth is sometimes we're braver than others. When Jesus told his disciples that he was heading back to see his homie Lazarus, the disciples fearfully reminded him that the Jews had just tried to stone him. And it's Thomas, my man Thomas, who pipes up and says, "Let us go that we may die with him." With a statement like that, you think he'd be called Thomas the Brave. But I imagine that the emotional impact of Jesus' trial, flogging, crucifixion, had to have had a toll on Thomas, and it was hard for him to bounce back. He's also the only one that isn't present the first time that Jesus shows up. And I feel like this probably had to have an impact on his faith too. Imagine that. You're the only one of the apostles not there. I don't know what he was doing or where he was, but I imagine thinking, great, the one time I decided not to hang out with my friends, the Son of God shows up. You see, it's important for us to remember that Thomas's bravery didn't entirely define him, and neither should his moment of doubt. We all have moments that we're proud of, and other moments that we wish we could forget. I know that I've got plenty. We all have moments that we were braver than we could have been, or moments where we wish we would have stood up. What we learned that from Thomas is that being in Jesus' presence brought out the best in him by increasing his faith. And the opposite of that is that being away from Jesus seemed to trigger doubt. The fifth thing that I have is that Jesus has a message for us. Thomas walked beside Jesus for 3 years. He heard Christ's teachings and saw him perform many miracles. But yet he still struggled to believe that Jesus had risen from the grave. After Thomas saw Christ's wounds, Christ responded with this verse right here. "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Jesus is talking about you and me. He's not talking about the others. He's talking about you and me. We didn't have the luxury of walking with Jesus or touching his scars. We live thousands of years removed from when the Gospels were even written. And Jesus recognizes the faith that it takes for us to believe. That's why he pronounces a special blessing over us. The thing is, there may not be a whole lot about a guy named Thomas in this Bible. But if we look deeper, we'll see a man just like you or I, who has questions and doubts just like us. That in itself teaches me that faith isn't knowing it all or knowing how it's going to turn out. It's that I remember above all else, I believe in Jesus. I remember that he has a plan for our lives. You know, I think about that with my situation with Zoe. My daughter has to have heart surgery next week, or 2 weeks, on the 21st. I'm terrified. I have all kinds of questions. I have all kinds of doubts. Open heart surgery is not a minor procedure. So it's easy for my mind to wander, as well as hers. But above all else, I have to remember who my God is, who is in control. You know, I constantly have to take this mountain of burden off of my chest. And I constantly have to bring it to the feet of Jesus. And sometimes it's weekly, it's daily, hourly, sometimes even minutely. I remind myself of the mountain that I am facing, that my daughter is facing. But then I'm quick to remind myself who is in control and who has a plan for my life. You see, in life, we all struggle with doubts and questions. And my hope for you today is that you're able to remember that it's okay to have these questions. It's okay to have these doubts. You know, I look at the questions and doubts that I have about Zoe, and I ask myself, does it mean that I believe in Jesus any less? And I promise you, I love God with all my heart. And it's only because I have these questions, it's because I'm human, just like you. And I hope that through this, through my testimony and stuff, that you're able to pick something and remember that no matter the mountain that we face, that God is still in control. Just because Thomas doubted didn't mean that he loved Jesus any less. It just means that he wanted more clarification or just needed to know for sure. And sometimes, like I said earlier, that sometimes seeing is believing. And for him to be able to watch Jesus go through what he went through and see, you know, like in the beginning of the video where it talks about the finite of death, to believe that he is Son of God, it's something that is just, it's hard for us to fathom. And just because he went through these struggles and he was honest about his struggles doesn't mean that we should look any less on Thomas. Just like we shouldn't look any less on ourselves when we have the same struggles and doubts. Let me pray for you. Father God, thank you for getting us here together today. Lord, even though I said my message a little faster than I wanted to, I pray for each and every one in attendance. I pray that when we have these questions and doubts, that we're able to remember who is in control and who you are. Lord, when we go through these struggles, I ask that you help us not question our faith and let us know that we are faithful, that we still believe in you, and it's okay to bring these things to you. God, I just ask that you play a special blessing over everybody here today. Watch over us, keep us safe. Amen.